Ugh, funeral directors are just creepy. They're haunted or something. While this is a clear case of job discrimination, the person doesn't question their own thoughts. If you're going to think like that, it's not okay if it causes trouble for others. People with closed minds inconvenience others. But for those with open hearts, it's tough to pry open the closed ones. My name is Yazoo. I have a younger brother named Leland, who's 3 years younger than me. We got along well as siblings. I adored Leland, and he relied on me. When we were little, he would always stick close to me. As we grew up, it's natural that we develop our own egos. I wasn't particularly stubborn, but Leland was a bit different. He was sensitive to things that benefited him and would go to great lengths to seize those advantages, sometimes without restraint. There was this silly incident from our childhood, something about snacks. Leland made a fuss about the size of the pancakes our mom made for our 3 p.m. snack. He claimed his pancake was smaller than mine. While his pancake did seem a bit smaller, I chose to ignore his petty complaint. Mom had gone upstairs after serving the snack and wasn't around. Leland accused me of being unfair and stingy, but I continued to ignore him. Just as I was about to start eating, Leland did something shocking. He grabbed my plate and threw its contents into the trash. Then he took a bite of his own pancake and proudly declared that he had won because he got to eat while I didn't. I was more surprised than angry. I started to worry and even fear for Leland, wondering if he would go to any lengths to assert himself. This was a typical sibling fight, but it hinted at a troubling aspect of Leland's personality. As he grew older, he became openly competitive with me. I wondered what he hoped to gain by competing with someone 3 years older and of a different gender, but Leland wasn't satisfied unless he was on top. He wouldn't be content until he had asserted himself over me, the closest person to him. I was more concerned about how he was treating people outside our family and whether he was causing them trouble. I have a childhood friend named Marshall. We have known each other since kindergarten and are the same age. Leland got along well with Marshall and even said, "I wish I had an older brother like Marshall instead of a sister like you," which I found incredibly rude. When I was in 8th grade and Leland was in 5th, Marshall's sister was in 6th grade. At the same elementary school as Leland, Marshall would pass on news about Leland to me. Leland was always trying to show off how great he was, but his classmates found him off-putting and he was isolated. Yet Leland didn't realize this, thinking instead that people were just too intimidated to approach him. Marshall's sister also said that Leland's personality was dangerous. As his sister, I wanted to do something, but the days passed without me knowing what to do. I felt helpless and my heart was heavy. The year I went to college, our paternal grandfather passed away when Leland was in 9th grade. Though he had lived a full life, the loss of our kind grandfather who had always been so fond of us plunged both me and Leland into deep sorrow. Thanks to our grandfather's good character, the funeral was well attended and grand. I was sitting with my family, lost in memories of my grandfather, when I noticed people bustling around the funeral hall. At first, I just watched them casually, but as the ceremony progressed, I began to understand their roles. I was impressed by their attention to the attendees and their efforts to ensure the ceremony went smoothly. These were the funeral directors and staff. The man who seemed to be the leader looked young, but was quick to assess situations and give precise instructions to his team. All the while, he maintained a warm smile and showed genuine care for the attendees. I found their dedication to comforting grieving families and ensuring that individual attendees had no issues to be truly admirable. Near the end of the ceremony, I shared these thoughts with Leland. He scoffed. "Well, it's their job, isn't it? Besides, I can respect a job that profits off people's deaths." Leland dismissed the topic and turned away, clearly not wanting to discuss it further. I knew Leland and I were different, but his discriminatory mindset worried me. My college life was going smoothly. I was studying business management, focusing on how to run a business efficiently and effectively. After witnessing the dedication of the funeral directors at my grandfather's funeral, I added social contribution to my research themes. Coincidentally, my childhood friend Marshall was in the same department. Marshall had always been interested in how different management styles could yield different results and wanted to explore that further. When job hunting, both Marshall and I ended up aiming for the same management consulting firm. We both made it through the tough interviews and received job offers. When I joked that we were stuck together again, Marshall laughed and said, "Yeah, we really are inseparable, aren't we?" I was shocked, wondering if someone had read my mind, but I was also wondering how we were actually connected. After joining the company, Marshall and I were assigned to different teams. My team focused on consulting for the service industry, which was diverse and had a wide range of issues. Determining the most effective solutions was challenging but rewarding. 3 years in, I had learned a lot, including from my mistakes, which became valuable experiences. I have had many bitter experiences, such as when a well-intentioned method was not as effective as expected, or when I misunderstood the client's wishes due to lack of communication. But each failure has become my asset, I said. Marshall had also grown, becoming a promising youth in his team. When I complimented him, he modestly said, "That's just flattery. I have a lot more to learn." Then I was assigned a new client, a funeral home. The client's president was a man named Ezekiel, 8 years my senior. His father had stepped down as chairman, and Ezekiel had taken over with a desire to implement new strategies. He was young but full of passion. Ezekiel had joined the family business after college and had gained a lot of experience. Ezekiel spoke passionately about wanting to improve the image of the funeral business, a field often seen as somber but socially essential. I sympathized with his ideas and wanted to help him. I felt a strong connection to his vision, especially since I had been impressed by the funeral directors at my grandfather's service. When I shared this, Ezekiel checked his notebook after asking for the date and name of my grandfather. "Oh, I was the leader for that funeral. I'm glad to hear you felt that way," he said. It turned out that my grandfather's funeral was his first time leading. This coincidence fueled my desire to make the project a success. I began by identifying challenges in the funeral industry, proposing solutions and backing them up with data. Ezekiel listened intently, asking sharp questions as we slowly shaped the strategy he envisioned. Step by step, he formed a policy that would help him realize what he wanted. A few months later, we had a rough outline of the final plan. Ezekiel invited me to dinner as a thank you for the work so far. I initially declined, saying we still had a long way to go, but his insistence made me reconsider. To cut to the chase, that dinner changed my life. "I like you and want to date you with the intention of getting married," he said, looking serious after a casual conversation. He was drawn to my unbiased approach to the funeral business and my dedication to its growth. "Working with you, I know we can grow the business and, most importantly, make each other happy." I had always admired his straightforward and dedicated approach to work, and these words, which could be considered a proposal, were so like him. Before I knew it, I had accepted his offer, following my heart. I completed the project he had assigned to me and established a new business vision. Upon hearing this, he asked me to help shape his new venture, and so I decided to leave my job and get married. I had been consulting Marshall about all this, and even he was surprised by my decision to marry and quit my job. "Looks like Yazoo beat me to the punch on marriage," he said, but he also wished me well and encouraged me to work hard in my future endeavors. On the other hand, Leland had a different reaction. "Marrying a funeral director and becoming one yourself? That's a job for lowlifes." Leland seemed to have a strong bias against the funeral industry. After graduating college, Leland had used his accounting skills to land a job at a well-known local hospital, even though it was privately owned. He believed his job was about saving lives, while the funeral business was for the dead and therefore less valuable. He was quite pleased with himself for this. I didn't care about Leland's skewed perspective and started my new life with Ezekiel. Diving into our new business venture, I kept in touch with my old office for useful information and also stayed in contact with Marshall. Recently, Marshall had been assigned to strengthen the management foundation of the hospital where Leland worked. The hospital's director and board chairman had naturally been the one to make the request, and Leland was the point of contact for negotiation. So I got to hear about Leland's work performance from Marshall. According to Marshall, Leland didn't have a great reputation among vendors. While he treated people he knew from the past decently, he seemed to make unreasonable demands on others. I started to worry about Leland. He always put himself first, and I wondered if he could be considerate of others. But I had my own life with Ezekiel and a new business to nurture, so I was swamped. Then news came from my mother that Leland was getting married. The bride-to-be was the daughter of the director of the hospital where he worked. They had met while she was working in the hospital's administration. What surprised me more was that Leland was going to be adopted into her family. I couldn't understand why he would choose to be the groom who moves into the bride's family. There were no other sons in our family. I had assumed he would bring a bride into our family and continue the family line. Not that we had a business to pass on, but I thought the old-fashioned idea of family continuation was outdated. However, Leland had a different idea. By marrying into her family, I'll be the future board chairman. We'll hire a director, but I'll hold the real power. I'll be number one. That's what Leland told our parents. Since our parents didn't care about continuing the family line, they agreed to let Leland marry into his bride's family. The meeting between the two families took place at a Chinese restaurant in a hotel around a round table. His fiancée Magnolia and her father, the hospital director, seemed very pleased to have found a successor. Ezekiel couldn't attend the meeting due to work. But when I conveyed that both of us wished them well, I couldn't help but notice Magnolia's reaction. She didn't seem pleased when I offered my congratulation, even averting her eyes and letting out something like a sigh. I wondered if I had done something wrong, but I couldn't think of anything. We had just met today. As the meeting was wrapping up, Leland and Magnolia said they wanted to talk and led me to a tea room in the hotel. "What's going on?" I asked them. "To cut to the chase, we don't want you at our wedding. Can you find some excuse not to come?" Magnolia said. I was stunned and shocked by this unexpected request. Who tells their future sister-in-law not to come to their wedding? I took a deep breath and asked for an explanation. "Funeral directors are so depressing. I can't believe my sister-in-law would be in such a job. It's embarrassing and would ruin our wedding," she said. I was shocked to realize that job discrimination was at the root of this. The funeral industry, or any job for that matter, shouldn't be subject to discrimination. Do you feel the same way, Leland? "We are in a higher class because we're involved in the noble work of saving lives. We can't associate with someone in a lower class like you," he said. "You are irrelevant to us. Please disappear from our lives. We won't even tell you where we are moving to. Don't even think about finding out," Magnolia added. I was fed up with their insults. "Fine. We are irrelevant to each other, so be it," I declared, standing up and leaving. On my way home, I couldn't stop the tears as I thought about the hurtful words they had said. When I got home, my husband had already returned. He listened to my story and got angrier than I had ever seen him. He couldn't tolerate the excessive prejudice against the funeral industry and the terrible things they had said. I knew that Leland was prejudiced against the funeral industry, but I was hoping to clear up the misunderstanding and start anew as a family, including myself. But when I realized that it was just a pipe dream, I became even more angry. It was lit. We decided not to attend Leland's wedding and informed both sets of parents. Both our parents and Magnolia's were shocked and tried to reason with their children, but it was in vain. We were firm in our decision not to attend the wedding, so our parents finally gave in and went ahead with the ceremony. We had no idea how the wedding went since we didn't attend, but later my dad told me it was awkward because the bride's own sister and her husband weren't there. The excuse Leland and his group gave for our absence didn't make sense to anyone. They didn't seem to care and just enjoyed themselves. I decided to focus all my energy on establishing a new business. The concept was simple: symbiosis. The funeral industry is more diverse than you would think. It's not just the funeral homes. There are also transportation services for the deceased and attendees catering for the post-funeral meal, and even companies that deal with gravestones. Each of these businesses is small and lacks power. So, the idea was to create a community to connect them all, streamlining operations and increasing profitability. To make this happen, we needed a lot of support and collaboration. My father-in-law, who has been in this industry for years and is well respected, took the lead in explaining the concept and persuading others to join. I also did my part by presenting data-backed documents to call for cooperation. Slowly but surely, our hard work started to pay off and the new business venture was born. There were many concerns about how jobs would be allocated and profits shared, but we set clear rules that everyone could agree on. The funeral industry is essential. People are always going to pass away and their families will need help during those tough times. The demand will never disappear, and if the supply side is well organized, business opportunities will only grow. Once we got on track, our business expanded rapidly. Now, the number of companies in our network has nearly tripled. Some are in industries you wouldn't immediately think are related, but they have been well received by our clients. I have been the CEO since the business took off. It's a huge responsibility knowing the future of so many people depends on this, but thankfully, things are going well. Our annual revenue has surpassed $1 million, a testament to our ability to satisfy a large number of clients. Then, a local newspaper that focuses on our area approached us for an interview. I accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to express my gratitude to the community and everyone who supported us. The response after the article was published was overwhelming. We were hailed as a game changer in the funeral industry. I was flooded with messages, almost all of them congratulatory, filling me with gratitude. That's when I heard from Magnolia, someone I hadn't been in touch with for years. I wondered why she was reaching out, and then she said, "Looks like you're making good money now. Why didn't you tell me? My hospital needs to implement a new medical system and we could use some financial help." I was stunned. She had obviously found out about my success and the business crossing the $1 million mark from the newspaper article or something, and now she was asking for money? Why are you even talking to us about your hospital's financial issues? We have nothing to do with it. No, thank you. After firmly rejecting the request, I got an earful of nonsense like, "You should be honored to help a prestigious hospital, and you're so stingy even though you're family." I told them not to call again and blocked their number. Just as I was reflecting on whether I had been too harsh, I got a call from Leland. "How could you not help Magnolia? You're making good money. You can afford to help. Stop being so tight-fisted." This couple is so selfish. They are perfect for each other. I told Leland the same thing I told Magnolia. "I don't know you people," and blocked his number too. A few days later, Leland somehow got through to my work phone. I assumed it's because I only blocked him on my personal phone. "Sis, all the funeral service providers are pulling out of our hospital. We can't operate like this. You have to do something." I could hear the desperation in Leland's voice. I thought it was about money again. But it seemed the hospital was in a real bind. Hospitals exist to save lives. But unfortunately, some patients do pass away. That's when we rely on funeral services for body transport and funeral arrangements. Recently, all such providers have been pulling out of Leland's hospital and no replacements are in sight. This is causing a real problem. Bodies are literally left hanging. The hospital's reputation is plummeting and complaints from families are mounting. I had heard about this from my colleagues and had even been consulted. Leland, who was responsible for contracts with service providers, had been making unreasonable demands, even asking for kickbacks. Leland was making outrageous demands, even asking for kickbacks, while threatening to terminate contracts. Fed up with his behavior, the vendors collectively decided to pull out of their deals with the hospital. Not just funeral services, but nearly all vendors withdrew, leaving the hospital in a dire state. Even when told that his selfish behavior was the root cause, Leland refused to listen, insisting he was in the right because he was the smartest. I sighed at Lilan's attitude and said, "You won't get anywhere unless you realize this is all your fault. But hey, it's none of my business," before hanging up and blocking his number. The hospital's financial situation worsened. Then Marshall showed up. "Lilan's hospital is in trouble because of what he's doing. I can't turn a blind eye. He's Yozo's brother, a guy I know well, and he needs to take responsibility," Marshall said. According to Marshall, while auditing the hospital's finances, he noticed some suspicious money flaws. It took time to investigate due to security measures, but it turned out Lilan was misusing hospital funds. His wife Magnolia was even using a password she got from her father to move money freely. Taking kickbacks from vendors was bad enough, but embezzlement too? It made my head spin. Marshall said, "This antisocial behavior couldn't be tolerated and asked for my consent to report it." Though saddened, I agreed, thinking that otherwise I thought that if things continued like this, Lilan would fall to the depths of hell. Public authorities investigated the hospital and Lilan's wrongdoing was quickly revealed. Lilan called the night before he was arrested. "Help me, sis. If I repay the money, my sentence will be lighter. Loan me the money."
"Don't hold a grudge for what happened before, just help me."
His words showed no remorse, so I said, "There's nothing I can do. After all, I'm not involved. If I were to say one thing, it would be to reflect more sincerely." I hung up feeling lonely. Lilan and Magnolia were arrested for embezzlement and likely won't avoid jail time. Even if they repay the stolen money, they can't afford it. The hospital's chairman, Magnolia's father, fired and disowned them both. He deeply apologized to the vendors and asked to resume their business. Thanks to my mediation, the funeral services resumed their business with the hospital. After all, it is the main hospital around here and is an essential place for the residents. Other industries are also starting to re-engage watching our moves. Lilan and Magnolia thought they were above everyone else, hurting others in the process. Now they're paying the price. It hurts to think that maybe I could have done something for them as a sister. I love my current job. It's a job that's needed, something that absolutely can go away. I want to continue to grow with my colleagues and become a force that brings peace to the world.